Reporting for ArabNet, I'm Nima, back in the RV with Clarence Wooten, the infamous.
Infamous, huh?
Infamous. You don't know what effect you've had on my life with that one lunch meeting 2.5 years ago in Palo Alto, the advice you gave me. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Tell us who you are, tell us what you got cooking, and so this interview is for the audience in the Middle East. So
yeah, I'm a serial tech entrepreneur who's been doing the internet thing since the early days of the first .1.0 boom.
Yep.
Back in those days, I called myself an entrepreneur. I had a web startup. It's called Image Cafe. Outside of Silicon Valley. I was doing this from Maryland, just outside of DC.
Yep.
Which certainly much different than Silicon Valley. But fortunately, I learned a few things and was able to connect with Wilson Sonsini and Mike Arrington back in those days. Happened to be my attorney. And so, yeah, so I ended up Mike the lawyer, if you can believe it. And quite frankly, he was pretty much the same as he is today back then. But he wasn't blogging. There was no blogging.
Yeah.
It didn't exist yet. But yeah, so I launched Image Cafe. 7 months after it launched, we were acquired by Network Solutions for $23 million at the time.
Awesome.
Which, for me, it was, you know, I went from ashy to classy, like Biggie Smalls said.
Yep.
And so, so then after that, I ended up leaving, kind of leaving tech.
Yep.
The bubble burst, I thought that I had sort of gotten in and taken advantage of it while the getting was good. So I started focusing on other businesses. And around 2004, I started noticing that tech was changing.
Yep.
Blogging had become sort of, you know, the big thing, and social media was beginning to sort of start up, and I decided I wanted to be a venture investor. So I got together with some partners and we started raising a venture fund called Venturepreneur Partners, and we were going to invest in early stage Web 2.0 companies. And I got about a year into the process and realized since we didn't have traditional investor track records, it was probably going to take us 3 years to raise the fund.
Yeah.
And a year into the process, I got the itch again. I realized that being an investor is a lot like being a coach, and being an entrepreneur is like being a player.
Yep.
So if I can still get in the game and shoot jumpers, why coach?
Right.
Right. So I ended up starting another startup called Collective X, and this is a Web 2.0 startup in early 2006. That's morphed into groupsite.com. We have over 40,000 customers. It's a social collaboration platform, basically Facebook or for the enterprise.
Cool.
But instead of big enterprise clients, most of our clients are large associations. So I guess the association enterprise. And so yeah, I ran that and got it to profitability, and now I'm the executive chairman. Finally decided to move out to Silicon Valley. So I moved to Palo Alto 2 years ago, and in hopes of building, you know, the big one.
It was your first week one where you had lunch.
It was, yeah. I was just getting settled.
And so the advice you gave me was, as I recall, reverse engineering something. But
I came up with something when we were raising this fund, and I called it reverse liquidity planning. And I call it's really reverse engineering the path to liquidity.
Yeah.
And really what it means is lots of successful serial entrepreneurs tend to do things that don't seem like much in isolation, but when you put them all together, they ultimately will lead to an exit in more cases than not. And so I started really thinking about what those things were in probably 2002, 2003 time frame, and I created sort of a framework that I call reverse liquidity planning. Not framework in a programming sense, but more of a methodology, and that was part of the basis for the fund that we were raising. But it's interesting that it changed the thought process so much, because the longer I'm an entrepreneur, the more, although you know, I still believe in reverse liquidity planning, but I'm not so excited about early exits anymore.
I use it basically for everything, and nothing had to do with exits or raising money. I realized, you told me, you're like, when you have the idea and you start getting going, go as far and deep and to the top, throw the net out there, let them know you're doing it, and then slowly move your way up, and then create some kind of artificial competition. And as you make progress, you keep sending updates, and then at one point the tide turns and they come to you.
Well, it's interesting, yeah. So basically, think big and increment your way there, right?
Exactly.
And which is funny, because that's what my next startup is going to be all about, Progressly.
Awesome. So really quickly, you were working on something called Arrive, which I thought was super awesome. basically let people know you're going to be in town and send them a reminder, right? And
yeah, you know, so Arrive, we were a Tech Fronts Disrupt finalists.
Yeah.
That was the idea I had, the original motivation for really getting out to Palo Alto, because I figured that was the best place on the planet to sort of launch that company and get it funded. You know, even as an experienced entrepreneur, you make mistakes, and I feel like I made two mistakes. The first, not raising enough money pre-launch. Because you really need to take more money than you think you need to launch, because in today's day and age, you know, everyone's looking for traction post-launch. And so if you don't generate immediate traction, there's no more money waiting for you, because you can't sell the promise anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So you need to raise enough money to allow you to get through a couple of iterations on your product, because very rarely does any product survive first contact with customers.
Yeah, because you had traction, and then last the update you gave me was, you know, we got to 100,000 users, and then it wasn't growing fast enough, so you had to...
You know, okay, so yeah, we got to 100,000 users in 3-4 months. For a mobile app, most think that's good, but, you know, for consumer mobile, in the age of Instagram, if you're not in that million user run rate, and, you know, 30 to 60 days, then it's not the kind of traction that VCs are looking for, because there's so many apps coming out.
Yeah, and so the entrepreneurs in the Middle East need to understand this. Like, it's not just you have an app, you're going to get money. You need to be on a run rate of 1 million users to
pretty quickly,
30 60 days,
if it's a consumer focused app. If you're doing an enterprise app or some other kind of B2B app, you know, the stakes are a little different. So that's what happened with us. I did not want to be in a slow grow. Right. When you look at most venture portfolios, kind of jumping ahead, you have a couple of companies that really take off and explode, and those become the big exits. Then you have companies that die, but then you have the companies in the middle that grow slowly, which is, you know, it's almost the death of an entrepreneur and the death of the VC, because you can't kill them, you don't know what to do with it. You want the company to continue to grow, you want to continue to support it, but it's not growing fast enough to generate venture returns.
And you can't raise more money.
And it becomes very difficult to raise more money, so it becomes a long haul. And so I had a choice to make, and ultimately, after trying to execute a pivot, which I think would have been very successful, it was, you know, just too crowded, too much noise in the space, and I had another idea. So, you know, as a serial entrepreneur, you gotta bury them and keep on trucking, right? So what brings you to Austin this year? Just kind of hanging out, or connecting with old friends? Or? All of the above. Yeah, I'm on a couple of panels, doing some mentoring. There are a couple of organizations here, Blacks in Technology, Black Founders. So I've been involved in a lot of that, because I do believe that, you know, I need to sort of support the ecosystem, particularly with young minority entrepreneurs in the tech space. And the last couple of years, I was supposed to be here. Last year, I got an award for being one of the top 10 blacks in tech. I wasn't even here to receive it. So, you know, I couldn't let that happen again this year, so I'm here this year.
What do you think this year? Other than the weather being horrible, any thoughts?
You know, I think it's good. You know, yeah, I had a good time, you know, yesterday, and I just jumped from event to event, to party to party.
What's a cool panel you've seen or you've checked out so far?
Actually, I was on a panel yesterday about pivoting or ending it, you know, which is something I recently went through with Arrive, so I can certainly speak about that. And so I thought the panel was pretty cool, because it's, you know, everybody has a different definition of pivot. And people want to know, is pivoting tough? And it can be, particularly when you have to reinvigorate your team and get them to buy into a new direction. But even worse than pivoting is having to make the decision not to move forward, and to move forward with something completely new.
But that brings up a good point. I think the quicker you can make those decisions, you know, the less painful it's going to be, because I know, even for myself, you have this idea, you believe in it, you see the vision, it's your baby, you know, and then literally to kill it off is a really, really heart-wrenching experience. And
it's hard, especially if you raise money. You know, as an entrepreneur, I've raised money 4 times, and I've always had a successful outcome for investors, short of the Arrive situation. But I hadn't raised a lot of money. I raised close to 400,000. Some of that was my own money. So when I decided not to continue with Arrive, that was the biggest thing, letting the investors down. But that can be fixed. I gave them all equity in Progressly, my latest startup.
So tell us
that was
about
the thing
that.
to do.
It's still in development, but give us a little sneak.
Yeah, it's kind of stealthy, but I'll say this. The web is becoming very visual, right? Pinterest, a number of different sites are kind of putting a visual layer on the web.
Yeah.
And we learn visually, that's just a part of our brain that, we probably don't take advantage of enough on the web. And so for me, I'm a visual person. I like to map out the steps of whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. And I typically do that on a whiteboard. And then when I accomplish each step, I like to print something out or put a sticky note up over top of that step so I can watch my progress unfold over top of my process. So Progressly is a tool that empowers professionals to easily share progress so that they can focus their attention on making progress. So I call it progress management for doers.
Nice.
Right, and so it's kind of like a GitHub for processes in progress. But with a Pinterest type feel. So that's pretty much all I'll say.
Looking forward to seeing it. Again, I'd love to be an alpha or beta user. Anyway, any other final words of wisdom you want to share, with our audience? Again, the people in the Middle East. What we're doing with these interviews, we're trying to add a human element to people who've done it and people who have experienced building, killing, raising money in companies. So any final words that you want to share?
Other than the fact that I would like to get to Dubai and meet some Middle Eastern Arab investors, sure, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
there's plenty of them. We can definitely connect you with.
If you need me, you can find me on Twitter at Clarence Wooten. That's my Twitter handle, at Clarence Wooten.
Right,
so
cool.
I'm always looking for good people to to work with and learn from and make money with.
Awesome. All right, Clarence.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon. And maybe we'll do another lunch at University Cafe one of these days.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank
you.
Peace.